All right, well,
Go ahead.
good afternoon, everyone. I can't believe that we're actually talking about three-year planning already. It seems like it was just yesterday that we were talking about this and meeting at SCOE in at those tables in the great training space. But now we're doing this training virtually, and we're glad that so many of you are here joining us today. So as we embark on this three-year planning process that Jenny's really going to walk us through today, we need to remember the importance of this plan. This plan is not meant to sit on a shelf. It's really meant to drive what's happening in your consortium. It's meant for you to look back over the last 3 years. Where are your successes? Where are areas that you need to improve upon? And then also looking at the changing, perhaps the changing demographics in your area, identifying educational workforce needs. We will likely have some census data, new census data that you can use for this. And then to define and develop your strategies and activities so that you can meet those goals over time. Of course, this plan isn't meant to be written by one single person. It's really meant to be collaborative through your whole consortium. And I would hope that in these plans, we'll see some of the impact of what we've learned during the pandemic. So perhaps more opportunities for student learning through hybrid courses or on-demand courses, or thinking about those students that have an impact for a day or two and can't make it to class, but could jump in on a Zoom. So I'm hoping that your plans will encompass some of those areas and some of those great skills that you've all learned and techniques you've all learned over the last, 18 months now. So, so again, good luck with your three-year planning. I know that this is not new to many of you, and you're developing goals for your region and for the success of the students in your region, and that's the piece that's most important. It's now my pleasure to introduce the dean who's the interim dean for CAEP from the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and that is Gary Adams.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I also appreciate Carolyn's excellent summary of the purpose for today. I won't cover that territory again since she covered it so well. I am gratified that there are so many community colleges that I saw in the participants that registered in the chat. We will be reaching out to you from the Chancellor's Office. It is our intent to become much more involved in non-credit and the adult ed areas. And we're working hard to be a good partner, to link our network up, and then also to join hands with our friends at the California Department of Education in getting this important planning done. And with that, do we turn it back to Neil?
Yes, thanks, Gary. Next slide, please. I think Carolyn covered this, so next slide, please. All right, so let me just quickly kind of remind everyone about the ed code that supports the planning. It's ed code 84906A, number 1. And so it says commencing with 1920 fiscal year, as this language was put in a couple of years ago, as a condition of receipt of apportionment of funds from this program for the fiscal year, the members of the consortia shall have a consortia approved 3-year adult education plan that addresses the 3-year fiscal planning cycle. The plan should be updated at least once a year. That's part of the annual plan process on available data pertaining to requirements of subdivision B. And so what they go on to say about what they like to see in the 3-year plan process, they cite they want to see an evaluation of need, evaluation of current levels and types of education and workforce services in the region, and an evaluation of funds available to consortium members. And then they list action items or activities they want to see that address educational needs, improving member effectiveness, and improving the integration of services and improve transitions into post-secondary education and workforce. So those are kind of the marching orders that the legislature gave us regarding 3-year planning. And you'll see that the template and the guidance reflect that. It's all based on the legislation. So next slide, please. So today, what we'll be doing with the small amount of time we have, I'll be walking through the template as well as toggling back and forth with the guidance document. We have the CAEP TAP as well as Jenny Malika here to assist if there's any questions that come up or research tips they want to add. But I'll kind of be walking you through really at a high level, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions that you might have. So with that, let's go on to the next slide. I think was the guidance document. But let me share screen really quick. Let me first bring up the template. So when you get into the document, and I'm going to skip through the overview. So the first thing you'll see, and this is in Nova, and let me just back up just a little bit. So what'll happen in Nova by the end of the year, this template that you see in a Word document will be actually in Nova. And so you'll be able to start, putting information in there, but it won't become available, I think, until after the preliminary allocations are loaded in February. And so when we at the state load the preliminary allocations from the governor's budget, that will trigger the 3-year planning in Nova to be live. And so then once you do your CFAD on May 2nd and certify it, then that will also tell Nova, these are the certifiers of the 3-year planning document. So just to back up, so we have the template here that we're giving you that you'll see in Nova. We have the guidance document that was sent out this last week. We'll be doing professional development that we'll go over at the end of this presentation today. For the next 3 months, we'll be doing professional development around planning and long-range planning. And then by the end of the year, you'll be able to see in Nova the same template that you're seeing today, and then you'll be able to start working on it. I think by sometime in February, you can start inputting information in it. And then by May, once you submit that CFAD, then your members can start certifying that 3-year planning document, because the CFAD in May 2nd will trigger who's going to be certifying that. So that tells the Nova system who are the certifiers for the year. And then you have until June 2nd to get everything in there and certified and submitted to the state. And then August 15th, you'll have the annual plan that you'll have to submit based on this 3-year plan. And what will allow the Nova system to do is take all those activities that you submitted in the 3-year plan will be available for you to choose from in the annual plan. So next year, come August, you'll be selecting from your 3-year plan you submitted in June, the activities that you want to work on for the coming year. And then your member districts will have the same opportunity to select on the consortia level activities that you brought in from the 3-year plan. They'll select the ones that they want to work on for the upcoming year, and they'll build their budget and submit that to the consortia. So it all kind of cascades, and it's kind of a logical sequence. And so hopefully that makes sense. So with that, let's dive into the template. And so that first section, it'll be a lot of just basic information about the consortia. The one thing that you will have to do is an executive summary of your plan. So you might want to leave that towards after you finish the plan, go back and write that executive summary. But that's kind of the main part of the first section. So when we get into section 2, it asks for an overview of your assessment, and a regional alignment and priorities. And let me toggle to the guidance document, because we have some prompts here that we want to show you. And let me get to that right now. So here's the guidance document. And if you scroll down, and submission date, things like that, overview of program areas, of course. Then here's section 1, of course. But then when you get into section 2, the assessment, and you scroll down to the first evaluation that you have to do. You have to do an evaluation, evaluate the educational needs of adults in the region. So the guidance document has these prompts or questions, guiding questions and resources. Now you can do it however you want and answer the question about, describe and evaluate the educational needs of adults in the region. So we listed these prompts here, and there's a whole bunch of questions that guide you through evaluating need. And then to the right of the column, we have all kinds of resources and links that you can use. Now, this is just a guide. You can do it however you want, but we're giving you, some resources and guidance if you choose to accept it. And there's all kinds of questions here. And then let me ask Jenny. Jenny, did you have any comments on this section as far as the guidance or resources?
Sure, Neil, just briefly. Well, I'm Jenny Mollick. I'm with High Road Alliance, and I was invited by CAEP to support a process of kind of collaboratively gathering some of these resources together. And I came to this work as someone who wrote 3-year plans for the last 2 cycles and was very involved in planning processes. And I felt very aware that those processes look different from consortium to consortium. You'll know what makes the most sense for you to tap, what sort of resources, who to have at the table. And yet at the same time, there are some kind of basic resources that really can help all of our consortia to have some basic information about our community, to make sure we're making the very most of the data collection that's done in the state, and the resources that CAEP offers, as well as some just general things you'll find on the web. So what we did is through a collaborative process, like I said, of CDE's involvement, CAEP, West Ed, CASAS, really coming together and thinking, what are some guiding questions that the consortium might want to consider as you look at the requirements for the 3-year plan? And then what are a few links where you might want to get started? So this may just be the beginning for you, or you might find that it's sufficient. You'll find here links to things like the Adult Ed Pipeline Launch Board, but also things that kind of take you beyond the world of CAEP to the US Census, PIAC, some of these more general resources out there. And I think you'll see as we move through, Neil, I don't know how detailed you want to get in the questions and things. I think each consortium will want to really read those over and see what stands out as most relevant for your consortium. But the attempt here was just to get you started with a few links that can probably spark your group's thinking. So there might be some data points here or some information that you'll be able to bring back to your consortium to use for discussion and really guide your thinking about the strategies and activities you want to define down the road. So this need identification section is really important, and we tried to put an especially large number of links here along with these guiding questions.
Right. Thank you, Jenny. And just a reminder, when the CDE and the Chancellor's Office and CAEP TAP and Jenny and the other CAEP vendors that we have, we also did a vetting process. We had a focus group from the field. And then we also, once we had the guidance, we went back out to field consortia leads and had them read this through and provide input and edit. So there was this real lengthy, in-depth vetting process that we went through. And so, there's just still a few things that we're tweaking and that we'll update as we go through this process. But for the most part, this has been a thorough process to get here. So we appreciate all the help and input that people have provided. So let me just scroll down really quick in the same section. It asks for evaluate the current levels and types of education services for adults in the region. And so what we mean by types are your program areas. So, your ESL, your adult basic ed, your adult secondary ed, your CTE, your adults with disability, your K-12 success programs. And then under CTE, we have workforce readiness and pre-apprenticeship and short-term vocational. And so those are the types and the levels. So as you know, we have students that come in, they get services, maybe they don't get to instructional hours. So in some places we do track the 0 hours. Sometimes they get into a classroom, we track 1 hours or more. And then for to get into our outcome pot, you have to get, or outcome pool, you have to get to the 12-hour mark. So the 12-hour mark of instruction is called our participant count. And so that would be the levels of education and workforce services. And so that's what we'll be displaying. And I'm going to scroll down just a little bit more in the box. And so what we'll be doing is bringing in the data from Launchboard, and you don't have to do anything. It'll be pre-populated in Nova. It'll show for each member district it'll show by, I think, consortia, sorry. So it'll show by consortia the amount of participants, so that's 12 hours or more, by program area. And then we added an extra feature. So once that's brought in from Launchboard, you'll also have the ability, if you have other adult ed providers that don't report through Launchboard, you could still add them. So let's say you have a library literacy program or a community-based organization or a nonprofit or a workforce board or county social services, and they're enrolling students in maybe an ESL program or a CTE program or something like that. What you can do is Nova will give you the ability to add that provider, and then you just check the box on what program they offer. You don't have to have the enrollment numbers. So it gives us, and when you're doing your report, it gives you an idea of who is providing services in the region, and then what type of service they're providing. And then we'll bring in for the CAEP members, we'll bring in the enrollment numbers from Launchboard. And so then we have these questions, when you're doing that evaluation, like Jenny said, here are some more guiding questions with some resources that you can look at. And let me just scroll down there. We're not going to review every single one of those, but Jenny, did you have any additional comments to add or suggestions on section 2 on the evaluation of types and levels of services?
I wouldn't get into much more detail on each one. Maybe just a note that you'll see hyperlinks where there's an obvious resource to link to. In some cases, you'll just see some resources listed, like, for example, the WIOA program implementation survey. That would be something where if you had access to that for your consortium, you would access it on your own. It's not just a link on the web, but it's noted there just so that you recognize that that could be a resource to you.
Okay, great, thank you. And so then we get into section 3, and section 3 is the metrics, barriers and metrics, because we're looking at CAEP metrics as well as student barriers. And I'm going to toggle back to the template just to kind of show you, and because Nova has this in a drop-down menu, it's difficult to visualize this because we couldn't put all the choices in via a drop-down menu because the template didn't have that capability. But let me show you what we did. So let me share back to the template. Okay, so let me scroll through. So there's that types and levels of services that you'll see. But then you get into metrics. And so let me see. So what you'll have the opportunity to do at the consortia level, we have two mandatory metrics. One is a number of adults served. And so the definition on that is 1 hour or more of instruction or receive services. So if that student, so if you go on the launch board and look at the total count, that's adults served. And then there's the participant count, which is 12 hours or more. So we'll be looking at the numbers of adults served, that's 1 hours or more of instruction or receive services. And launch board will have the last 3 years, and then you'll be projecting out or targeting the next 3 years of what you think your consortia level will be. And that will be a number. And then when we look at student barriers to employment, we picked 4 that we thought were important that are tied to the funding formula for CAEP. And so ELL is English language learner. Then you have low literacy, low income, and long-term unemployed. And then the consortium will have the opportunity to pick at least 1. So you can pick all 4, you can do 3, you can do 2, but at a minimum, you have to have 1. And so you'll see from the last few years what the percentage of students with barriers has been in these categories. And then you'll project out based on the one you pick, you'll project out of what your consortia is going to look like over the next 3 years. And I'll just scroll down a little bit farther to look at the member level. So then we have metrics at the member level. And we forgot to add, there's 2 mandatory metrics for the member districts. The first one is adults served who become participants. So that's that 12-hour mark that we were talking about. And so that's that outcome pool. So we really want to focus on that at the member level. And then we're also going to have a mandatory metrics around percentage of funds spent. And so that would be your active CAEP funds only. And so we would be tracking, the system would come in and tell us, okay, the last few years, here's the percentage of funds spent. And so we would list all those active years. And then you would project out over the next 3 years what your annual percentage of funds spent down would be, all active funds, And so we want to track that because we know there's carryover legislation coming out in the near future. And so that will be something that we want to keep our eyes on. And so we're going to update this to show that percentage of funds spent. So you'll have that in the guidance document. And then you'll have the option, you don't have to, but if you want to, we have 10 additional metrics at the member level that you can choose. So you don't have to pick any of these, but if you're an eager beaver, overachiever, you can pick as many as you want out of the optional metric. We'll bring in the data and so how you did in the past, and you project out your targets for the next 3 years. And so I'll just quickly go down. So we have high school diploma or equivalency. We have educational functioning level gains for adult basic ed, for adult secondary ed and ESL. And then we have transition to post-secondary, which includes CTE. We have participants that earned a post-secondary credential, participants that transition to post-secondary. And of course, we have the employment and earnings, second quarter after exit, as well as earnings metrics, median change in earnings. So those, and then finally, we have the immigrant integration milestone, which is based on the course completion or achievement of an EL Civics COAP, which is a civics, assessment. And I forget the exact term of COAP. Maybe someone can put that in the chat. But that's through TOPS Pro Enterprise. And so if you have the ability to use the CASAS forms, and CASAS will be rolling out the ability to use EL Civics COAPs for all CAEP members this year. And so look for that in the coming program year. And so you'll be projecting out those targets. It'll kind of look like this, but it's through a drop-down menu. So this doesn't really do its justice, but you can kind of see you'll have your actuals for the last 3 years, and then you'll have your targets. And it'll kind of look like that. And then we'll update those targets every year when we get the data. Let's see. Okay, so let me go back to the guidance. So I'm going to go back to the guidance. Okay, so there are some prompts here, not as many as the last 2 sections or evaluations. And so Jenny, did you have any key points here for the resources or guiding questions for the metrics section?
I don't think there's anything more to add there, Neil. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you can see the guidance. We kind of go through the whole process, lay it out. A lot of details here to walk you through this process. And then we get into objectives. So section 4 on objectives and section 5 on activities and outcomes are definitely linked. And so what'll happen is, and you've kind of done this before, the legislature gives us 3 areas or action areas to address. So they want us to address, educational needs. They want us to address improving integration of services in transition. And they also want us to address improving effectiveness of services. So just like if you go back to the old days of AB 86 and the certification of eligibility, where we had things like student acceleration, transition, professional development, leverage funds, closing regional gaps. This is all, the legislature didn't recreate everything. They kind of used stuff from the AB 86 days and the certification of eligibility document. And you'll see that in the legislation that drives this 3-year plan. So there's a continuity there between the start of AB 86 into AB 104 into, the CAEP program. And so if you scroll through the guidance document, you'll see there's questions on prompts to help you come up with objectives to address educational need. And there's, quite a few questions there. And we also have objective 2, improving integration of services in transition. And there's questions there and resources to help you. And then the 3rd section, of course, improving effectiveness of services. And we have, and effectiveness is going to tie back to the metrics and targets that you just set up in section 3. And so, for instance, one of the questions is, what needs have been identified related to improving the effectiveness of services? And you could go back to your targets because that's all about effectiveness, or you might have some other ways you're defining effectiveness in your consortia. And so these are some questions that you can ask. There's a lot of resources out there around that. And then of course, getting into section 5, it ties back. So you have your objectives and how you're defining that. And then section 5 lays out those activities and outcomes. And so section 5 will give you the ability to put in, and how they break it out is short-term, intermediate, and long-term. And so you can group your activities like that. But when you do your annual plan, you'll have the option to select any kind of activity, whether it's short-term, intermediate, or long-term, because some members might be working on short-term stuff and another member might be starting an intermediate activity and somebody might be starting a long-range plan, but it'll vary between members. So you'll have the ability to select those things from your 3-year plan and work on them and to build your annual plan, which cascades into your member work plan and budget. And so you'll be able to check the box to say, I want to work on this activity that was listed in my 3-year plan that is also in my annual plan. And as a member district, I want to work on that this year. And here's my budget to support that. And so then that goes through the approval process of your member work plan and budget, gets approved by the consortia, and then you start spending down your funds and reporting that through NOVA as well. And so I don't know, I probably didn't do it justice. Jenny, do you have anything to offer? Maybe I went too fast on this, but I'm going to check in with you.
Neil, the only thing I would add is that on section 4, you see just a whole assortment of links there. And the idea was really just to support those leading the planning processes to support the group's inspiration and creativity and thinking about the strategies and activities, and really using this as an opportunity if good ideas are popping up to just see what resources are out there, what research has been developed, what reports are already out there. Many of these links take you right back to the CAEP website because it's a huge repository of great resources. And actually just browsing around there will get you quite far. But here we try to kind of guide you around each of the objectives to a few resources that might be helpful. You'll also see links there to the new Advancing California Adult Education website, which includes quite a few model programs and some research briefs. But again, this is really a beginning to get you thinking and support you in bringing the group together, looking at some effective practices and research-based practices. So you may well want to go far beyond these, or you might find that this is sufficient to spark that creative thinking.
All right, thanks, Jenny. And remember, you're the ones that are going to be approving your plan. And so you're writing this plan for your use, not to get some blessing from some higher power, but this is going to be a useful plan that will drive, that change in your region. So just think about that you're not trying to meet a deliverable as far as like, oh, I checked that box. This is actually a plan that will be useful for you to guide you over the next 3 years. So we want you to think about that in that context. Let me see if there's anything else here. So here are those, short-term, immediate, long-term, and you can describe that, and you group those activities by that, and you put the responsible person, you show what metric and student barrier it's attached to, so you have the drop-down menu there. And then the last section is evaluation of funds. And so what that is the same drill that you go through into NOVA when you do your program area and leverage funds reporting. And so they're actually going to take the data that you submitted in the prior year into NOVA and bring that over into the 3-year planning document. And then you just do an evaluation based on that funds. So you're evaluating the leverage funds that are reported into NOVA. And let me just read there: to evaluate the funds available, critically review this data on the prior year leverage funds from NOVA in the program area report to anticipate and assess how well the available funds will be addressed the educational needs of adults in the region over the next 3 years. And so we're not evaluating who got more than who, or why this person is getting this and I'm not. We're not doing that drill. We're doing an evaluation of how it's going to help meet the needs of, or address the needs of educational needs of adults in the region over the next 3 years. So we want you to stay away from that discussion about, limited resource, scare resources, and get into the weeds on, who got more, this and that. That's probably not a productive discussion for this exercise. And I think that is, there's some other guiding questions there, but of course you have the preview and submit, but there's a whole host of resources, tons of resources. And it's like another 30 pages, I would think, of resources. I'll let Jenny kind of explain the purpose of the appendix here with all the additional resources.
So before Jenny jumps in on that, I also wanted to add in about the continuous improvement plan. So all of the agencies that are WIOA Title II funded, you all had to do a continuous improvement plan. The hope is that you will bring those and share those within your consortium, because you can align some of your goals from your SIP into your 3-year planning document. Just so that there's some continuity there, so you're not feeling like you're doing two different plans. So use your SIP as another resource. It's one of those added resources that Jenny's going to share with us now.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Yes, we moved quite a bit here into the appendix because the guidance document was getting heavy with so many wonderful links. But what we've done here, which hopefully you'll find helpful, is group things in a few different areas. So Appendix A is all your resource links related to the adult education pipeline. And this is, many of these are links that you have seen before. They're webinars you've seen before. They're links you've found on the CAEP website or in the newsletter. But here you'll find them compiled all in one place in an effort to make it as easy as possible for you to get the most out of the dashboard that could possibly benefit your planning process. So there are a lot of, there's a link to the dashboard itself, and then there are some overviews of the basics, some cheat sheets. There are also going to be some new resources that are just now being developed. So you'll want to be keeping your eye on those CAEP newsletters or on the website to see the resources in each of these areas where it indicates coming soon. Fortunately for you, though, there is here a little brief description, so you'll be able to, Neil, I'm still on Appendix A. I don't know if you want to just sort of highlight that there are these noted areas where something is coming soon. You'll probably want to read over the brief description there so you know to kind of put a placeholder in for looking at those resources once they become available. They'll be really timely. I would say, yeah, there are a few other links here at the end that are sort of generally about using these data reports. I won't go into more detail there because there's lots for you to explore. Appendix B now, if you do want to scroll a little further, Neil. So this is meant to be your concise summary of resources coming from CASAS and TOPS Pro Enterprise. So there are a few links here with some nicely organized bullets telling you what you can explore further there. So there are specific reports, and then toward the end there are some links to webinars. Like I said, you may have seen these already, but the idea was to bring them all in one place, so for easy reference. And then if we scroll down to Appendix C, here is meant to be a few other more general resource links along with a number of definitions. So whereas the main body of the document gives you guiding questions and resources specifically related to each of those sections of the plan as you move through NOVA and complete the plan, here you'll find some other additional background all gathered together in one place. So there on the screen, you see some general guidance and support. You'll have the link to EdCode there in case you need to reference it, some general planning resources, definitely worth browsing through those. And then we do go section by section with some of these definitions and general resources. So for example, the section on assessment will give you the definitions of WIOA. If you want to look up this is actually the section on other plans. So being very clear about which are those other plans that might be guiding your region that you would want to look for. And then some definitions related to those. So the definition of WIOA, the definition, many of these coming from EdCode or from the federal level definitions of what is meant by educational need or by your consortium members, just to have these all in one place. And I don't think I'll go through section by section. I think each of the sections has a few of these links, often organized around definitions. You'll see the tables that have definitions and then some resource links to back those up. And that's consistent all the way down through section 6.
All right. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if we had any questions. We have about 15 minutes or so. And then I wanted, before we closed, I wanted TAP to come back and share the professional development calendar that we have for 3-year planning that'll be happening this coming month and into October. So Veronica, Holly, or Mandalee, did we have any questions? I wasn't monitoring the chat because I was having to multitask with the screen sharing.
No worries. There were several questions. The first is more like a comment than a question from Alan. He says it would be interesting to have planners describe emerging careers in their respective regions and or the global market.
Great, thank you.
And then there were several about NOVA and the template and the ability to add a formatted 3-year plan, which I answered those. And then moving into questions specific to the guidance from Kirsten. Our members wanted to know if the barriers to employment matrix will include standardized definitions, or does CAEP use WIOA definitions?
So we use the federal WIOA definitions, and that'll be our standardized definition, so it's consistent.
Okay, and Alan asks, for employment and salary gains, are there a variety of research techniques to address these key issues?
So there's quite a few resources that you can use, or you can access other ones. So through TopsPro, we do the employment and earnings survey. And then through Launchboard, we have the base wage file. And then through community college, we have the non-credit employment survey. And so I'm sure there's other, data resources out there that can get at employment numbers. So there's a variety of resources you can use. I just one thing to state. So if you wanted to develop a more comprehensive plan with graphs and pictures and other additional items for your local board or your stakeholders or your public officials. So in NOVA, you'll have the ability to download in HTML what you've typed into NOVA. And then you can, save that and work on it separately and use that for local purposes, whether it's presenting to a public official, your superintendent, your stakeholders, your consortia board, however you want to do that. But just at a minimum, you just have to submit for the state's responsibility and deliverable. It's just what you type into the text boxes into NOVA, if that makes sense. Okay, sorry to interrupt, Veronica. Were there any more questions?
Yes, there are. Michelle asks, can you say more about how to set targets for barriers? For example, how do we set a target for low income or low literacy? Is it good to increase these numbers to serve more students or decrease these numbers to help more students? Or are we just predicting the number we think we will have so we can address needs in our activities, not clear about targets for barriers?
Right. Yeah, I think we're going to have some guidance on that, maybe some webinars coming out. But I would say, as your enrollment goes, so goes your number of students that are showing that barrier, because we know most of our students come with some type of barrier, whether it's a language barrier, an employment barrier, literacy barrier, things like that. And so I don't know if you can control that, but if you do outreach and marketing, I would assume the more students you get in, maybe your percentage is going to go up a little bit. I'm not sure how that works. And this is the first time we've been kind of setting targets on barriers. So we'll see how this goes, but we'll definitely set up some workshops and provide additional guidance on that. It is a little tricky, I must admit, but it's the first time and you're not going to be penalized for if you set your targets and it's off or anything like that. And let me say that for all the targets, they're targets. So, if you don't meet your targets, there's no penalty. It's not related to your funding. And so this is just to give you kind of a roadmap of where you're going, to start looking at the data to kind of plan ahead for the next 3 years. So I'll pause there because we probably have more questions.
All right. Serena asks, how would you address this section? I believe she was referring to the leverage funds, I believe. But she said, how would you address this section if the instructional hours and budget bill reporting was done incorrectly? For example, one member inputted all potential hours for offered programming rather than actual hours.
Yeah, so the information from NOVA is just a helpful resource. If you want to put in something different, that you think is more, is better data quality, you can go ahead and do that. You don't have to automatically put in the information from Nova, or when you do the evaluation, you can explain that. You have enough room in the text box to maybe explain that data. And so I think you have flexibility in that or you could go back in and correct that into the program area report, because you'll have that opportunity starting September 1st, your estimates are due in Nova for your program area report and leverage funds. And then your actuals will be certified on December 1st. And so you'll be, when you do your 3-year plan, you'll actually be looking at I think, yeah, it'll be the 2021 year of program area. And so you'll have the ability now this fall to, in Serena's case, upload more accurate data. And so even if the data still is a little wonky, you could explain that in your evaluation on that. So you have that flexibility. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, and the next question is from Alan. Will ultimately the higher ups commit to incentivizing outcomes?
We haven't had that discussion, so I can't say yay or nay on that, because it's not tied to incentive in the legislation. So that's probably something, I don't know, that might take place in the future, but I haven't seen anything on that. So sorry.
All right, and Marina asks, for community colleges, non-WIOA community colleges, is there a way to report on services? She doesn't think MIS is capturing or reporting service hours. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct. Yeah, we don't have the ability in COMIS to track services, the hours. I thought there was a way, I don't know, we'll have to, maybe on one of the follow-up webinars that we have with related to COMIS, we can try to address that. But I think there are some drawbacks to reporting services in COMIS, at least for the hours. And so it's probably, I don't know, I don't want to sound like an expert because I'm not too versed in how that works, but we definitely will have webinars covering that. So sorry if I didn't exactly respond to that question.
All right, and then the rest of the comments are expressions of gratitude and colleagues helping one another. A question just came in. Can you remind us when we can access this meeting tape on the state website? Some of our members registered, but the link went to spam. So it takes our third-party vendor a few weeks to get it back to us, remediate it. So I would say at least 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks out from this recording being remediated, but as soon as it is made available, TAP will send to all consortia leads, members, and everyone who registered for today's webinar. So everyone will have access to it. We'll also post it on the website and it will be included in the newsletter for future reference.
Right, and then we'll also add in that member level metric that's mandated related to percentage of funds spent. So we'll also put that in there. So
All right.
Veronica, do you want to share the professional development calendar related to the 3-year plan as we're getting kind of to the end here?
Okay, did you see that question from Ryan?
No.
Okay, so Ryan is asking, what is the current LAO perspective on adult ed and key data points they are focused on?
Don't know. I don't have regular conversations with LAO. So we'll see during the hearing process if those kind of questions come up, or this fall when they're going to put the budget together for the next year, what kind of questions we get. But right now, we haven't had any dialogue with LAO on adult ed.
Okay, and one last thing, Gary has requested that community college personnel add your name, college, and contact email, phone number in the chat. And I will go to sharing the PowerPoint, which highlights the upcoming professional development that will be offered. All is also included on the registration website. So starting September 1st, next Wednesday, we will have the planning mindset. And so this particular webinar is just to prepare all of you on undergoing this 3-year planning process. So we want to, just do this webinar to help with the planning mindset and kind of get you in gear to start the planning process if you haven't already done so. If you have, then it could be kind of a reaffirming process. And then every Wednesday, after starting September 1st, every Wednesday, we will offer a PD webinar on the 3-year planning process. And then September 20th through 24th is the director's event week. We have taken the director's event as a day as we know it into a week. And again, it's focused on the 3-year planning process. So on September 8th, we will have the consortium program quality self-assessment. And again, that is just to go over the program assessment that we have made available to all of you, as well as connect other self-assessment tools like the WASC, the CIP, et cetera. And then on September 15th, we will have a webinar on building sustainable collaborative partnerships. And that is with a colleague out of Pennsylvania State University, Kaylin Hamilton. And again, that is just going through how to build those sustainable collaborative partnerships as you're going through this 3-year planning process. So for each of these opportunities, we have provided the title as well as who's going to be providing the webinar and the date and time. And again, all of these webinars are now open on the registration website. And then on September 17th, we'll have the CAEP program evaluation 101. So that's just going through the basics of program evaluation. And so this will be an introduction to terminology and concepts of logic modeling, as well as strategies and examples that you all can use to develop your SMART objectives, your SMART goals and short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes. Then we'll go into the director's event a week. Again, that's September 20th through 24th. And on September 20th, we'll have a welcome to the CAEP Directors Event Week from the CAEP office. And so they'll be providing updates as well as kind of reiterating what we're covering today in terms of the 3-year planning process and the implementation phases. And then we'll have 2 days worth of program evaluation. One will be based on CASAS and TE program evaluation. And then the other one's going to be based on the community college side. So that'll be provided by WestEd, and they'll be going over program evaluation using the MIS data and then other ways to collect and analyze your consortia demographic and program data. Then we'll have on September 23rd, which is not necessarily a part of the 3-year planning process, but it is going to be a part of the director's event. On September 23rd, we will have the new consortium lead onboard training. And so those of you who are on the call today, if you are a new consortium lead or you've been in the role for 3 years and you would like kind of a refresher in terms of onboarding tools and resources that are available to you, please join us on September 23rd. The registration link for that actual day is on the website. Then September 24th, we'll have goal setting and targets, as well as community asset mapping. And then we'll roll into our Wednesdays again. And on September 27th, we'll have a webinar on logic modeling. And then on October 6th, we'll do a live demonstration of the NOVA system and inputting the 3-year plan in the NOVA system. So those are all of the PD activities that we have up until this point. More are being planned as we speak. So as new opportunities become available, new resources become available, we will make sure that all are made aware of every tool and resources that will benefit you in the 3-year planning process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen as I see there are questions and everything.
Let's see. I don't know, we've got 3 minutes left. I'm trying to see. There was a question from Todd about has there been any more information or update to the WASC template for adult ed for the self-study report? I am not familiar with that. If anybody has any information to share on that.
I can, Neil.
Okay. thanks,
So,
Carolyn.
so we are working with them on updating that. I haven't received a new template from Nancy Brunel yet, but thanks, Todd, for the reminder to sort of reach out to her and get moving on that. Thanks. Adding it to my to-do list.
All right. And then Veronica, did we miss any other questions?
No, I just checked and there are no questions, just people adding their contact information.
Okay. All right, well, does anybody, we have 2 minutes left. Anybody want to go off mic and on mic and ask a question? No? Okay, well, it's pretty comprehensive. A lot of professional development, as you can see. That guidance document is very resourceful, a lot of links. You can use it as a resource to help you. The good thing is you have until June, to get this in. So we're giving you plenty of room to work with, we hope. And you can work together. You can talk to your fellow consortia director in the region over. You guys can work together. I'm sure regional stuff doesn't stop at the consortia border. I'm sure regions are fluid. And so working together might be a good way to approach this as well, as at least on the high level, kind of need stuff and regional data, labor market information, employment data, stuff like that. So anyway, all right, I'll have Veronica and Mandalee and Holly close it out. I appreciate Jenny for hopping on today and helping us out, and Carolyn and Gary for the introduction and welcome. And we look forward to seeing you at future professional development events. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Neil. We share the same sentiments. So thank you to all of our presenters as well as you all as attendees. Again, we will be getting all of the resources out to you as soon as we receive them. And you receive links to our registration page where all of the PD are listed, as well as a link to our evaluation. Please fill out that evaluation to let us know if there are other professional development opportunities that we can explore, especially around the 3-year planning process. But thank you all very much for your time and your participation this afternoon, and everyone have a great week. Thank you.